This is Join Us in France, episode 327. Bonjour, I'm Annie Sargent, and Join Us in France is the podcast where we look around France and leave no stone unturned. Today, I bring you a conversation with Elyse about the lovely town of Saint-Antonin-Noble-Val in the Tarn-et-Garonne. That's number 82. If you like to keep track of our license plate numbers. We'll tell you about the wonderful history of this place, but also about hiking, scenic drives, and gorgeous overlooks, caves, and chateaux you can visit nearby. It's also a great place to rent canoes and enjoy the view from the Aveyron River. Perfect for active vacationers and families with kids. And easy access to great local food and wine too. Now is the time to select a few new places to visit in France, and we don't think you can go wrong with Saint-Antonin-Noble-Val and nearby towns. After my conversation with Elyse, I'll also update you on the likelihood of visitors being able to come back to France for the summer of 2021 and how French President Nicolas Sarkozy was condemned to 1 year in jail, and also a quick update on the renovation of Notre Dame in Paris. If you like what we do here at Join Us in France, which is talk about France, of course, consider supporting us by going to patreon.com/join us and visiting joinusinfrance.com/boutique to check out my cookbook, Join Us at the Table, and my Paris tours. Follow Addicted to France on Instagram to see my photos of Saint-Antonin-Noble-Val. I will post them this week. And the best way to stay in touch with me and with the podcast is to sign up for the newsletter at joinusinfrance.com/newsletter. Bonjour Elyse.
Bonjour Annie.
On this great day, we are going to talk about Saint-Antonin-Noble-Val, a beautiful place in the southwest of France.
A beautiful place in the southwest of France, a beautiful place in one of these lovely large villages or small towns, depending upon how you categorize these things, that is within a nice drive, an easy drive of Toulouse. You can get there if you are actually going from Albi. It's north, slightly, I think, northwest of Toulouse. It's actually only about 66 kilometers, which is about 45 miles from Toulouse.
Yeah.
In a very beautiful, beautiful area that is along the Aveyron River, and is in part of France that has its ancient name. The ancient name for the region is the Quercy-Rouergue. Quercy. And the Quercy, I don't know why. I love that word.
Quercy?
Quercy. I love that word. I think it's because I love the region, and I have always come to think of the Lot and the Lot-and-Garonne and the Tarn-and-Garonne and all of that area associated with it. The word Quercy is Quercy, and it actually is a word from Old Latin for live oak. And it's because it's a region that has lots of cliffs that are limestone cliffs, and it's because it's limestoney, there's lots of live oak there, and it's the beginning of the region that has the coast area and all of that. And Rouergue is the ancient name of this province. There were the Counts of Rouergue, and this is one of the towns that was, especially for a long time in the Middle Ages, one of the most important cities of this region called the Rouergue. Mm-hmm. So, and I know it's a place you love.
Oh yeah, it's beautiful. And you were wondering if it's a village or a small town. Yeah, it's right in the middle, because they do have an elementary school, they have a primary school, and they have a collège.
Yes.
They don't have a high school.
No.
And they have under 2,000 people.
Exactly.
So, it's a big village.
It's a big village. It's a big village.
I would bet they have major grocery stores as well, like one or something.
Oh, I'm sure on the outskirts, because of course, unfortunately, there are now, things that are built up on the outside. But it is true that when you compare it to some of the other villages we've talked about or that we've gone to visit,
right,
1,800 people on a permanent basis. That's not counting people who come in the summer. That's a fair-sized village for France.
Right, because we've talked about Bruniquel, for instance. It's much bigger than Bruniquel.
Oh, much bigger.
Right.
Much bigger.
Right.
It has much more activity. It has everything. Bruniquel is a really small village. It doesn't have your basic facilities. And this village, Saint-Antonin-Noble-Val, does indeed have all of that.
And there's plenty to... So I spent a full day walking around and really enjoying the area. And, you could have your lunch there. There's lots of cafes and restaurants and stuff in normal times. And there's plenty to do around there as well. Hikes, drives. It's a very nice place.
It's a very nice place. It's actually, I think for a lot of French people who have visited the southwest of France, it's known as being one of the more beautiful villages, and it has, of course, one of the reasons that it's interesting to visit is because it has a very big and very well-preserved medieval center, and so it's very, very interesting. So I thought we could start with talking about the history of it according to the legend, because this is a town that has its name is connected to a legend. Now you're going to have to take what I say. I'm going to try and do this without being either too sarcastic or disrespectful, but I will just tell what the legend is, and then everybody can sort of make of that whole thing what they want to. Okay. So it turns out, and I did not know this, even though I've been a guide long enough, but maybe I should have, and I've guided there. I've taken individuals, and I've taken some university groups there. But it turns out that until 1962, the village was simply Saint-Antonin. That's all.
Okay.
And it was in 1962 that, for reasons I am not sure of, but I think that had to do with the growing concept of tourism, because the 60s was really a period when there started to be some affluence in France, that they decided to add a second part to the name, and they added Noble-Val, which means Noble Valley, and it is because, in fact, it is a town that was started by the Romans, and the Romans called the area that it's in, excuse me, because it's actually in a valley that's right based on the confluence of the Aveyron River and another smaller river with these beautiful cliffs on one side. And the Romans called the whole area Nobilis Vallis.
Oh.
Isn't that pretty? Isn't that
yes,
pretty?
It is pretty.
Very pretty. So because of that, the region decided to officially change the name to Saint-Antonin-Noble-Val.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what it's been ever since.
It sounds really good. I like it.
It sounds really good, doesn't it? Right?
Yeah.
And so if you go there from, for instance, from Bruniquel, you continue along basically a road that follows the Aveyron River. It's very impressive because you have these gorgeous limestone cliffs, and you kind of come down into the bottom of the valley. And this is where Saint-Antonin-Noble-Val is. It is not high up. This is really on the valley floor, and it is a town that has a lot of its industry, even in the Middle Ages, was centered around water. So it's very, very important to the area. But coming to the legend, once upon a time, a long time ago, mm-hmm. in the 400s, at a time when the Roman Empire fell, parts of what is now France, it was all separate little kingdoms. It was nothing like what France is now in any way. But it was slowly becoming Christianized by people who were being sent as missionaries, obviously, to convert people all over what was, of course, called Gaul. And the southwest of France, at the end of the 400s, was actually under the control of a group of people that I mentioned very briefly in talking about Bruniquel, but I think maybe at some point I really need to explain it a little bit more. But it was a group of people called the Visigoths, who were a huge population of people that came through, that went across Europe, like the Franks. The Franks were in the north, and they're the ones, of course, who eventually gave the name to the country of France. The Visigoths were a major group of people, and we're talking 30 to 40,000 people, who eventually migrated and came through into the Roman Empire and into Gaul. Mm-hmm. And they settled in the southwest and made Toulouse, in fact, their capital for 100 years. Now, the thing about them is that they were Christianized, but they were not the same Christianized. How do I put this? They didn't have the same beliefs as the people who were what we now call Catholic, which, of course, was the dominant Christian religion at the time. They had other beliefs, but they actually ran the southern part of what is now France. And so once upon a time, a long time ago, in the town of Pamiers, which is very close to Toulouse, which is south of Toulouse, there was a nobleman who was a cousin of the king or emperor of the Visigoths, and he had a son, and that son at some point in his life, and I'm not sure, nobody knows exactly the exact dates of his birth or how old he was or whatever, but at some point, this son decided that he wanted to convert to what we would now call Catholic Christianity, which is the dominant form. And the Visigoths did not like this at all. They did not like this at all. So he left Pamiers, he left this area. He actually went to Rome, and he became a priest. And once he became a priest, he was sent back to Gaul, to southern France, which, Gaul, to convert. And, of course, in the 400s and the 500s, this was still a very active thing because a good part of the population was still what we would call pagan, right? Mm-hmm. They weren't yet Christianized. So what did he do? Well, he went to this area called the Rouergue. Mm-hmm. Lucky him. It's very beautiful. And I'm sure at the time it was even more beautiful. Lots of forests, lots of gorgeous limestone cliffs, and lots of tiny little towns and villages, even way back then, because it was a very successful area. They had a lot of tanning. They had a lot of cloth making, a lot of activity on the rivers, and he was very, very, very successful in converting the whole area. Remember, we're talking about the story. This is the story. Okay?
Right.
How many years that took, who knows? Nobody knows exactly. There's even a fighting about exactly what dates, but whatever. Let's just say that he managed to convert the whole area, and this probably took a number of years. And then at some point, he decided that he was ready to go back to where he came from, which was Pamiers, and convert the people there, who were still these Visigoths, with a different form of Christianity, which, of course, this is like the war of religions that came hundreds and hundreds of years later. And the local leader, who cared about him very much, because he was the head of the church, but there was a local count or whatever he was, he said to him, don't go, you're going back to an area where you're going to be in danger. And he said, apparently, this is what they call apocryphal, we don't know if this is actually true. Mm-hmm. He apparently turned to this leader and he said to him, don't worry, I will be back, but I won't be back alive.
Oh.
Okay?
Oh.
Okay. So this is the problem, okay? So
this
here
is like a Jewish mother.
Jewish mothers don't come back alive. Come on, So he goes to Pamiers, and sure enough, he goes there and tries to convert the people. And the leader, who is no longer this uncle of his, or whatever it was, a new leader, this is obviously 20, 30, whatever years, how many years later, he says, no. And so what happens is he has him arrested, and this is, of course, something that did happen a whole lot. He has him executed, and of course, seriously, from the point of view of the history of the church, this is what we call the early Christian martyrs, because they died for their faith. However, and this is part of the legend again. What happened was, and this is a little bit gore, so just hang in there. He's cut up. Okay. Oh. Yeah, I'm sorry. I mean, it's very important. I have to tell this anyway. So he's cut up, and his head and his left arm are separated from the rest of his body. Now, don't, Annie, ask me why, but this is what happens, okay?
Oh, it happens to a lot of saints. This is normal.
Yeah, well, I know. Pamiers is on the Ariège River, which leads into the Garonne, which leads up into the Aveyron, and there's these riverways, these waterways that go all the way back to where he had been very successful in doing his proselytizing. Anyway, so what happens is that, let's not talk about the rest of his body, but what happens is that angels pick up his head and his left arm, and they put them in a little boat, a little rowboat.
Oh.
And this little rowboat goes up the Ariège, because this is coming north, northwest, goes into the Garonne. The Garonne goes all the way up, joins up with the Aveyron River, and lo and behold, one day he arrives back in this town that had been the headquarters of where he had built this abbey and where he was doing all this converting. And the ruler, who was in fact a count of Rouergue, he took the head and the part of his body, and at the time, of course, what they did was they turned these, of course, into relics, saved them, and had them buried in a spot right in the center of what is now Saint-Antonin-Noble-Val. And on top of that, they built an abbey and a monastery.
Well, there you go.
And there you go. And that abbey and monastery, which was built somewhere starting at the end of the 500s, became one of the most important abbeys and monasteries a couple of hundred years later, when it became what is called a Benedictine abbey, which is simply an order that was very, very important and very, very influential starting in the early 800s. And the abbey was named after him. And the town that grew up around the abbey was named after him. And that has been the name ever since. So on the site where he was buried was the Abbey of Saint-Antonin. And then it became so powerful and rich that people came, and this is very often what would happen in the Middle Ages, and the town grew up around it. And now one of the things that's fascinating is one of the things that made the town very wealthy was saffron. How's that?
Saffron?
Saffron.
Huh.
It grows an enormous amount in the valley off the Aveyron River. And, of course, saffron, which we associate particularly with food, was mostly used for dyeing cloth. It was this, beautiful kind of golden, yellow, orangey color that was used for cloth. And it made the people in the area very, very, very rich. And by the year 1000, the whole area was attached to the kingdom of the Counts of Toulouse, and there was a Viscount of Saint-Antonin, and he was, believe it or not, the ancestor of our wonderful painter, Toulouse-Lautrec.
Oh, wow.
How's this for, 6 degrees of separation? Here we go, The Viscount de Saint-Antonin was a member of the House of Lautrec, which means that the name goes back that far, and he was the original ancestor of Henri de Toulouse-Lautrec, the painter. And then what happened was that during the famous war with the Cathars, when there was another fighting basically over differences of religion, the area of Saint-Antonin-Noble-Val defended the new religion. And I think I mentioned this, maybe I think I mentioned it the last time with talking about Bruniquel. The Count of Toulouse, he had a half-brother who basically was a traitor and gave over areas that belonged to him that were under his control to this general that was sent down by the King of France. And so eventually what happened was there was this terrible, terrible fighting in Saint-Antonin-Noble-Val, and the local viscount was taken prisoner, and of course eventually the whole area was given over to the King of France. And in fact, St. Louis, our wonderful famous St. Louis, thanks to whom we have the Sainte-Chapelle and so many other things, he actually decided that the area was wealthy enough in terms of commerce that he would forgive everybody. This is interesting, the way they did things in the Middle Ages. It's not like now, So basically what happened was he said, okay, now you're part of the French kingdom. What I'm going to do is I'm going to send representatives of the crown to make sure that you follow the rules that are set up by me. But in the meantime, I'm going to give you the right to have 12 councilmen, which means, like in Toulouse, you can kind of run things yourself as long as you give me a percentage of everything you take in. That's not a bad way of doing business when you think about it.
Yeah, it's all right.
Especially, if you're a king that's living far away, and in those days, of course, it was really far away. This is as good as you're going to get. You can't be every place at every minute, right? So Saint-Antonin really became wealthy again. But unfortunately, maybe, I'm not sure why, but maybe because it is at the point where several rivers converge and it's in a valley, it really suffered through several different things. It suffered during the 100 Years' War when there was lots of fighting with the English. They tried to burn it down, but they didn't manage to. The 100-Year War, which of course didn't mean they really fought for 100 years, but they kind of skirmished about off and on for 100 years. Yeah. That took its toll. But the biggest toll was taken during the War of Religions again in the 1500s because, oddly enough, Saint-Antonin-Noble-Val, in spite of good old Saint Antonin, it became Protestant.
Right.
And
to this day, it's known as a.
He was gone for a long time, Annie. He was like, maybe by this point he would have been Protestant himself. We really no way of knowing.
We don't.
No way. No. But what did happen is that because it was a Protestant stronghold, and the war, the War of Religions in France was really a civil war. It was really very, very nasty. It divided up families, and it was rather bloody, unfortunately. What happened was that when the Protestants took over the village, or at the time, which was considered actually a city, it had about 6,000 people, what they did do, which was not very nice, was that they burned down the abbey. Mm. And they burned down the library that it had, which was unfortunate because it apparently had some very precious ancient documents, and the hospital that had been built starting in the 800s. And so it was difficult. It's hard to imagine that at the same time these people were trying to defend their own place where they lived, and at the same time they were tearing down all these things. It's a little bit like, unfortunately, the Taliban destroying things that they don't agree with, that kind of thing. Yeah. But what happened was, of course, that all of this ended in the early 1600s when the new king, Louis XIII, basically his armies managed to take back everything, including Saint-Antonin-Noble-Val. And basically what he did with this town was he told them, we're not going to destroy the town and we're not going to take your people, but you need to pay me some money. Mm. And the amount that he asked them to pay, and I was trying to figure out online if I could find a conversion, but I couldn't. But it was 100,000 livres at the time, which my guess was probably quite a lot of money.
Probably, yes.
Really a lot of money. How many millions? I really don't know, but enough that it probably it choked them a lot, But they were left to live, and they were left to continue with their activities. And the only thing that happened was that from that point on, if you were Protestant, you could not be part of the city council. So that was basically the way it ended. So Saint-Antonin stayed what it was for all of those centuries. Then, like lots of small places that are kind of off the beaten track, went through a period where it was really just kind of a hidden away place that nobody thought about very much anymore. And like lots of other places, came back into some kind of importance starting after the French Revolution. When people were looking for new places that had beautiful old things, and where tourism was something that was a concept that was developing for the first time. And it became a place where people reactivated some of the old activities. Saffron is still a product of the area. Lots of textiles in the area, lots of artists and artisans, tradespeople that live there. And to this day, it is considered to be one of the most complete medieval cities left in France. And it's really, the city hall dates from the 1100s, which is pretty remarkable. It has an enormous number of houses from the Middle Ages that are all very well taken care of. It has a beautiful covered marketplace. It has ancient Roman baths that were converted into baths later on. It has mills that are along the river. And it has lots and lots of these lovely little narrow streets to walk around. So it's a wonderful, wonderful place to visit.
Yeah, I think it's a lovely place to spend a day. And so when we went, I went with my mother-in-law, and I can't remember who else was with us, but and we went directly to the tourist office where they gave us this map of a walking tour. Now, I went to the tourist office website and I couldn't find anywhere to download the map, so I'll scan it for you and put it on the show notes for this episode so you can download it and look at it yourself. The map is self-explanatory, but the legend is in French. I don't remember if I ever had it in English or if they have it in English, but it's, at least you'll know the names of the places that you're looking at.
Right.
It's a lovely little walk. It's
a lovely little walk. They do have the maps in English, and I was there, I'm not sure, I was probably there about a year and a half ago, I think. But there also, it's very interesting, lots of markers on the ground that you can follow. So I don't know, I'm the kind of person that will just go, I won't even follow that. I'll just kind of zig and zag in and out and follow everything around. You kind of can't get lost because, it's eventually you come almost around to where you started from. But it's really a lovely place to just sort of wander and go in and out. And, there are lots of buildings that have the dates on them so you can see how old they are. It has an authenticity to it. I just want to mention this, and then you can talk about the activities in the area. This is really interesting. Last year, in 2019, we have we now have, everyone out there may not know this, but they've now made these gigantic regions. It's not just apartments and whatever. There are these big regions. There's a woman who's the president of our region. Her name is Delga. Her last name is Delga, and she wanted to make Saint-Antonin-Noble-Val one of the major grand sites of Occitanie because it's a label that is very good for tourism, and it brings in, of course, enormous amounts of tourism to a place. And guess what happened? In 2019, the inhabitants of Saint-Antonin-Noble-Val unanimously signed a petition saying that they refused to be listed as a grand site of Occitanie because, as far as they were concerned, it would raise the prices of everything. The local people would be pushed out because people would start wanting to create Airbnbs. It would bring too many people in and destroy the environment. And they managed to negotiate with her to change the conditions for having people come to Saint-Antonin-Noble-Val. And apparently, I don't know if there are many other towns like this, but the people who live there are very protective of the site.
And they should be, because that's exactly what happens. We're a travel podcast, so we're not going to talk smack about tourists.
Right.
But this is something that happens when tourists show up in great numbers, is that somebody figures out, oh, I'm pretty good on Airbnb or whatever site. I'll buy a place and, rent it out. And then they're pushing out locals, because if you're renting somewhere and your owner says, oh, I got to double the rent because this guy wants to give me cash for this property, come on. That's just not nice. Nice.
You're right. So, I mean, I'm very impressed by the fact that they did this, the negative side of bringing in, too many tourists is all of that. You destroy a little bit of the environment. The prices go up. It becomes a place. There are other villages we both know about that in the summer are unbearable to go into,
And really, I think if you don't want to participate in this as a listener, just go to a hotel. Go to a hotel. Because
really,
the hotels have been established forever, and it just, they're not, it's not the same property that the hotels are buying than the Airbnb folks.
No, and of course it does help the economy if you do go to a hotel, to be honest, so it really is nice. So, of course, it's in a gorgeous area, so let's talk about the activities, Annie.
Okay, so there's this beautiful walk all around the village or city or town or whatever you want to call it, and that will probably take an hour or two, I would think, if you stop everywhere. Mm-hmm. It's very scenic, so you'll stop everywhere for photos. And you'll probably want to have a meal. There's lots of restaurants down there. I can't remember where we ate. I just remembered that it was fine,
Yeah. Oh, I'm sure. Basically, my feeling is the southwest of France is you eat well, period.
Yeah. So I didn't make a fuss about the meal. I don't remember what we ate or anything like that. I might have photos, though, because I always take photos of my food. But it's a very pleasant walk. But if you want to stay a little bit longer, there are some fabulous hikes. So I'll point you to this website that talks about several hikes you can do around there. Some of them are day long and pretty difficult for the strenuous people, but some of them are just an hour and a half, 2 hours, and they're fairly easy, and you could probably do them with your kids. And because you're walking along this river, it's just gorgeous, it's just
gorgeous,
nice
really.
things. You also have nice scenic drives and overlooks. Not to miss is one thing called le Circo De Bono. It's an overlook. It's 5 kilometers away from Saint-Antonin. It's on a street it's numbered D958. So it's départemental 958. And it's in the direction of Caussade, okay?
Okay.
And when you get there, there is a small parking area, so you have to slow down. And there's signs. I'm sure there's signs. I haven't been for a long time, but, there's signs usually to this sort of thing. And you have to go slow, park on the side, and then you can go look. And there's a table, an orientation table, I think you call it in English.
Yeah.
Where you can see all the Aveyron River going through there. So that's a nice place you can drive to, and of course you can also walk to it. Okay, that's one of the walks that you can do if you decide to hike. I think it was an 8 kilometer circle. So it's a long, not long, but. On a good day, it would be.
It's a good walk, yeah.
Yeah, it's a good walk. Another place is called Point de Vue de la Route de la Corniche. So this is one of the nicest point de vue. Point de vue means overlook, right? Is that how you would say it?
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So that one is on the D115 in the direction of Bruniquel. It's 3 kilometers away from Saint-Antonin. and you take, on the left, you take the road to the Corniche. So that's the D115B. And all of this will be on the website, okay? And this small little windy road takes you to a nice little cute place called Brousse-les-Antibelles. And all along, you have this beautiful scenery. And then that joins up with D115, and then you can hook back towards Saint-Antonin. Anyway, that could be easily done, with a car. But if you don't have a car, you could rent a bike and just do that. I'm sure there are bike rental places in Saint-Antonin, so you could go on a bike to see these places if you don't have a car.
And I think you can do some paddling on the river.
Yes. You can rent different things to exert yourself on the river.
I know you can rent canoes, and I think I'm not sure exactly, because when you right nearby you have the gorge, which means you really have these cliffs that are just fabulous with these.
It's beautiful.
Perched up above.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure if I don't think there are any rapids right there, but I know that you can do some water stuff that's really kind of neat.
Yeah, there's a beach. I know for sure that there's a beach because I saw it, but I don't remember seeing boats and canoes and stuff. But they're everywhere. Oh no, actually, I do remember seeing people canoeing from the city center. I might even have photos. Yes, you can definitely do that. There's a grotte, so there's a cave you can visit. It looks very much like all the other caves with, the stalactites and the stalagmites. It's called Grotte du Bosc. It's 3 kilometers away from Saint-Antonin. You pay a little fee. I think it's €7.50, and it takes about 45 minutes. You have to go with a group. Okay, that's
most of those caves you do. I think.
Right. I'll put a link to a YouTube video. It's not a great video, but it's a family that just held up their phone. But it'll give you a feel for that cave.
Fine,
yeah. There's a nice another overlook called Le Roc Danglar. And it's very nice. Again, it's on the D115. I'll see if I can map them for you.
Yeah.
Maybe I can put them on a map. Another thing is called the Chateau De Cas. It's a chateau. It's started in the 9th century, but then the Templars were there in the 13th century. Anyway, it's an interesting chateau that you can visit. I'm not sure if it's open this year, but of course, COVID times, it's a mess for everybody. So these are a few of the things you can do around there. The area is chock full of fun things to do for families. I personally think it's worth spending a few days, because when you're in Saint-Antonin, you're not far from Bruniquel, you're not far from Penn. There are a lot of other interesting things to see around there.
Yeah, and it's for people who don't really know. It's a valley. The Aveyron River is a gorgeous river, but you're very close there to the beginning of what are called the coasts. You mentioned the word before, which are these high limestone plateaus. It's a very beautiful area that's not very well developed, which makes it nice, and it's got lots of old medieval villages and ruins, castle ruins, and places to hike and little streams. It's really a beautiful, beautiful area. I must say, So Saint-Antonin is a perfect base because it's big enough to have places to stay, and you can just go out from there.
Yeah. I highly recommend it. And of course, it's right in our neck of the woods, so it's that sort of place where we've been many times. Maybe we just go through it. We don't even look anymore. But visitors always claim. And of course, there's the movie that was the 100-foot journey.
With Helen Mirren.
Right. So some of it was filmed there.
I can't remember. I was trying to think of the name of it. I can't remember. It's the name. It's a movie about. She's a chef.
Yeah, it's the 100-foot journey, is what it's called.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yes.
And it's it's a sweet movie. It's a movie. And I
liked it. I thought it was cute.
It's cute. And I'm not so sure that you can really recognize Saint-Antonin from the movie.
No, you can't, because I knew that it was filmed there, and I was desperately trying to figure out.
Yeah.
You could see that. No, you
even
can't,
for us who've been there many times, like,
right.
Well, maybe you'd recognize, I don't know, a door knocker that definitely was there. But unless you happen to see that door knocker, or something like that. I don't know. I've been watching. I know you don't have you don't have Netflix, but I've been watching Lupin on Netflix.
And apparently it's a huge success.
It's very nice. And it's filmed in Paris, and you see Paris, Yeah. But with the 100-foot journey, you don't see Saint-Antonin-Noble-Val. You see a medieval town, but it's the generic medieval town. It could be any medieval town, because we have thousands of them. So for us, it's like, that doesn't look like anything like Saint-Antonin.
Yeah, you can't always tell.
Yeah. Anyway, beautiful place. We recommend it if you're going to, and you have to enjoy slow travel. But I think if you spend a few days and you go canoeing, if you have kids, or even without kids, you go canoeing, you go hiking a little bit. One day you visit the town. Are there like museums or anything like? I don't think there is. Are there?
I think there's just a teeny little museum of Saint-Antonin itself. That's basically what it is,
Yeah.
But I think that we're going to be talking soon, I guess, about another couple of villages in the area. All of the villages in the area have a lot of history attached to them. So it's a really rich part of the country for that reason,
Yeah. Yep. All right, Elyse, thank you so much.
You are welcome, Annie.
I don't believe your story at all.
Oh, come on, Annie. Come on. Hey. Well, listen.
It's a story. It's a story.
It's a good story.
Au revoir.
Au revoir.
Again, I want to thank my patrons for supporting the show and giving back. Patrons get several exclusive rewards for doing so. You can see them at patreon.com/join us. That's Patreon. Join us, no spaces or dashes. Thank you all for supporting the show. Some of you for many years now. You are wonderful. And a shout out this week to new patrons, Gary Marks, Donna Green Stano, Nan Deniston, and Francis Cleveland. Thank you so much for becoming patrons and making this podcast possible. I am preparing a French history brief about a French woman who was the first female Western explorer to enter the forbidden Tibetan city of Lhasa, and an intrepid explorer. And I will be launching the new exclusive forum for patrons starting probably in the next few days. Look out for a message on that, patrons. Hey, Elyse.
Hi, Annie.
How is your Patreon going?
Well, my Patreon is going very nicely, slowly, but steadily. I have to say, I would like to thank all of my patrons who signed up during the month of February. There were a bunch of you, and it just warmed my heart.
Yay!
And it added a little bit of support to the pocket as well, which, we can't deny.
It's
but
good.
Just thank you so much. I have a whole bunch of people who signed up in February, and I have 3 new people to give a shout out to right here in the first 3-4 days of March. And so I would like to thank very much Julie and Kara and Nan. You are really, really, really welcome, and I am so glad you have joined Elise's Corner, and I hope you enjoy the episodes.
Yeah. So to sign up for your Patreon, you go to patreon.com/Elyse Art, ELYSART, and you'll be right there. And thank you so much.
And thank you so much.
My thanks also to Deidre Chukro and Carol Mellinger for sending in a one-time donation using the green button on any page on Join Us in France that says Tip Your Guide. This week in French news, former French President Nicolas Sarkozy was found guilty of corruption and condemned to 1 year in prison and 2 years probation. Now, he immediately appealed, which means that by French law, he's innocent until proven guilty again in a different court of law. What is he accused of? Well, let me grossly simplify it for you. Long ago, there was a rich woman called Hélène Bettencourt, who she ran L'Oréal. She was the owner of L'Oréal, the cosmetics company. She made a large campaign contribution to Nicolas Sarkozy, and a judge started investigating to see if they followed the rules. Okay? Sarkozy did not like being investigated and asked a friend to look into the evidence that they had against him, in exchange for a good word to be transferred for a new job near Monaco. Eventually, Sarkozy was found not guilty in the campaign donation matter. I think they just didn't have enough evidence. But he was found guilty for asking his friend, who was a lawyer, to snoop around for him. Is he going to go to jail? Well, like I said, technically, the moment his lawyer filed an appeal, he's not guilty anymore. Technically. But really, I would be stunned if he actually went to jail, especially for asking his lawyer to snoop around for him. Like, in the grand scheme of things, of what some presidents do in the world, not just in France. So we'll see. Wait and see. But what's funny and oh so French is that so in exchange, a good bribe in France is to be the promise to be transferred to a good place near Monaco. That's a good bribe, yeah. I don't think it would work. Can you imagine a president, like an American president, saying, "Oh, I'll support you to move to Florida for better weather, and in return, you get me some information." That would never work in the U.S., but in France, it works. On the COVID-19 front, we're just now over 5% of the population vaccinated with 1 dose of a vaccine and under 3% with 2 doses. The Prime Minister, Jean Castex, made a presentation to the country this week where he set an objective of 10 million first vaccines in arms by mid-April, 20 million vaccines in arms by mid-May, and 30 million by the summer. He said he kept it vague. People over 50 with no medical issues will be eligible for vaccination starting mid-April in France. There is a clear effort to speed up the vaccination process. When I looked at the French vaccine dashboard just now, I saw that there are 2.3 million doses of vaccine sitting in freezers in France, and that's too many. I understand that they want to reserve doses for people who have priority, but there's a fine line between being prudent and being careless, because vaccines only help if injected. And just a side note, because I've had this conversation with a few people recently, the best vaccine is the one that's in your body. That's the same problem I run into all the time with the silly question of what's the best croissant in France. Well, it's the one in front of you, obviously. If you really want to wait and eat no croissant until you get to that one place a travel writer told you was the very best, then so be it, but you could have been enjoying croissant all along, you dum-dum. So get the vaccine that's offered to you as soon as you can, because none of those vaccines are dangerous at all. They've studied this by now, and they all help greatly. So voila. Problem solved. Get whatever vaccine you can. And also, nobody knows what's the optimal time between shot number 1 and a booster shot. They ran the trials with a 4-week interval, because if they had set it to 1 year, we still wouldn't have the results, right? So does that mean that getting the booster shot a year later is useless? We do not know. It hasn't been tried because it's so new, So don't get your panties in a knot about little things like that. When your doctor says come back for the booster, just do it. The end. Okay, so does that mean we'll reopen by the summer? I am quite certain that people who reside in France will be free to move about and go on vacation by this summer. I'm fairly confident that European borders will also reopen by the summer. That means that lots of hotels, restaurants, and cultural sites will be open, probably with some caveats, by the summer of 2021, this year. Exactly which ones and under what conditions, I don't know yet. Nobody knows yet. But most of you, my dear listeners, are in the US, Canada, Australia, England, New Zealand. What does that mean for you? Will France be open for general tourism by the summer of 2021? As things stand today, I don't think so. But we may have vaccine passports by then. It's possible vaccination campaigns will go faster than planned, and that's what's happening in the US. There are lots of moving pieces to this thing. So I think if you find a great deal on a plane ticket, and this is money you can afford to lose, by all means, go for it. But if you want a sure thing, it's best to wait until late 2021 or later. So now for a quick update on the reconstruction of Notre Dame. Okay, the calendar, they had set, President Macron had set a goal to reopen Notre Dame and have a beautiful ceremony in 2024. That's still the goal. Okay, that goal hasn't changed, but they still haven't started reconstruction. The culture minister, Roselyne Bachelot, has been touring all these beautiful forests, and they all want to provide wood for the reconstruction of the La Flèche, what do you call that? The pointy thing on top. Sorry. The same one that Viollet-le-Duc built years ago. Okay. They're going to rebuild it the same way it was. So she's still at the point where she's touring these forests and doing PR for all these wood companies and whatever. Real reconstruction. I mean, there's work happening at Notre Dame, but it's mostly making sure that everything is secure and that it's safe to work. Still, they're still doing all of that work. And real reconstruction will not start until September 2021. Now, we're not famous for being super fast in France, and I've said that a bazillion times, so it shouldn't surprise you. But the good news is, the plan is still 2024. So, let's hope. Let's hope. For my personal update this week, well, my garden shed is done. Well, technically, it's only 95% done because I started working on the electricity for the shed, and then I chickened out. For an electrician's daughter, I am quite confused by power and junction boxes and such. So my husband doesn't feel like he's up to it either. So I started the work and then stopped. I called our electrician and he'll come do it in a couple of weeks. But everything else is done. All the garden implements are neatly organized in the shed. It's lovely. It's got a nice, teak color, which I've enjoyed. I've put 3 coats of, wood stain on top to really, because it's not super quality, high quality wood. So I want to protect it from the elements. Hopefully it'll do the job for a few years anyway. We're ready for our daughter to move home with her few things of furniture, and we'll store them in our garage. But our garage is amazingly empty right now. It's surprising. It's never been like that. I'm really looking forward to having her at home for a little bit longer. She'll be starting her internship mid-March, and the company where she's going to be working wants her to I'm going to tell you what it is, but I don't really understand it myself. They want her to continue the development of the software for it's kind of a coffee table sized tablet. And they do crisis visualization with this tablet. So high tech, moving bits around on the tablet with their hands. I don't know what they're going to do. Anyway, she's excited about the project and I'm very happy for her. And I have received my electric bike just a couple days ago. It was ahead of schedule. See, some things work in France. It was a few days ahead of schedule. I'm getting used to riding it and it's so much fun. I'm really not a biker normally, so I have to get my behind to enjoy the process as much as my head does. I started with a 10-minute ride, then 20 minutes yesterday, and I came home to a sore behind after 20 minutes, but it didn't last long. And I know that it takes a while to get used to riding a bike. So hopefully I'll have time for a 30-minute ride today once the podcast production is done. And if the weather cooperates, we're running into a little patch of a few wet days here. But I mean, it's still nice and it's not freezing or anything. It's just, cool and wet. So I'm going with easy increments and just getting familiar with this beast. I think I made a good choice. It's not one of these super powerful e-bikes that go super fast as motorcycles, some of them. As a matter of fact, if I stop pedaling, the motor stops helping me. The thing is, if I'm going uphill, I can pedal on the first gear, the one that's easy for your legs, and the motor does most of the work for me. So I'm not zooming up the hill. I'm going at a comfortable pace. And if I'm somewhere flat, I can turn the motor all the way off and let my legs do all the work. So that's just right for me. And I look forward to taking it various places so I can explore new parts of France on my electric bike. My husband, who rides for exercise and has been doing so for years, he likes the bike. He tried it. He likes it, but he says it defeats the purpose, which is true in his case. But if I didn't have the motor, I wouldn't get on a bike to begin with. So getting some exercise on the bike is better than getting no exercise, right? In episode 52, 149, and 283 of the podcast, these were episodes where people who tour France on bicycles or do it for exercise or competition. In episode 283, my guest, Greer Ball, she toured Provence with a group of riders. Well, some in her group had electric bikes, and she was envious at times, and I get that. So I'll test touring around with my electric bike, and I will report. I will also start making videos for patrons on the bike. It's going to be a little bit rainy this week, like I said, but I'll wait for some, good weather, but it won't be very long now. So show notes for this episode are on joinusinfrance.com/227, the numeral, where you can see a recap of what we've discussed, as well as link to relevant resources. And if you enjoy the show, introduce a friend to the podcast and show them how to listen. We're on all podcast apps, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Amazon Music, Audible, Pandora, and you can ask your smart speaker to play Join Us in France. And of course, you can also listen on joinusinfrance.com. Next week on the podcast, an episode about visiting France with a baby with Jessica Osborne. She's the mom who can do it all, has great tips for young families visiting France. Send questions or feedback to Annie@joinusinfrance.com. Thank you so much for listening, and I hope you join me next time so we can look around France together. Au revoir. The Join Us in France travel podcast is written, hosted, and produced by Annie Sargent and copyright 2021 by Addicted to France. It is released under a Creative Commons Attribution, Non-Commercial, No Derivatives license.